The next topic we want to talk about is how AI is starting to play out in terms of opportunities for startups, where they should be playing, where they shouldn't be playing. And I think the main one here, Chris, that you wanted to lead with is NVIDIA and how they're starting to cannibalize the developer platform layer. So, yeah, please line this one up.
Yeah, so NVIDIA at the 2024 Computex keynote, which has just happened recently, Jensen Huang was up there talking about his stuff, and some of it we've already seen. But he was going deeper in this thing called NIMS, NVIDIA Integrated Management Microservices. There's like a suite of these things in all sorts of domains. They're kind of domain specific, healthcare, insurance, material science, what have you. And these are like essentially large language models, AI models that you can deploy against your domain. They're kind of pre-baked, pre-trained, and you can refine them and train them and tune them. But they're kind of like a building block you can just grab off the shelf. And if you're in material science, you can deploy the material science NIM and kind of quickly bootstrap your material science AI project or business or software. And it just struck me as like, NVIDIA has long worked its way out of just the hardware layer into the infra layer and kind of the OS layer for these things. And now they're moving up the stack into core cloud services and templates. I mean, they're really cannibalizing what some of their customers are proposing to do, including like OpenAI, Amazon, Meta, and so on, by offering these powerful, generalized, domain-specific large language models or templates or tuning engines. Jensen calls this the AI factory or the token factory. I mean, he's building all layers of the factory, from the foundation to the walls to the roof to the equipment. He doesn't seem concerned about disrupting his very large, very small set of buyers. And I think an OpenAI should be concerned. I think a Meta and Amazon should be concerned. And I think it's another example of how the big seven or the big four are going to eat AI for lunch, leaving a questionable amount of white space left for the rest of us.
Why does that developer platform eat OpenAI? Because you still need an LLM behind it.
So the reason this is somewhat of a threat to OpenAI is that these NIMs, they're kind of like these self-contained atomic units that have a foundation model, a curator microservice, a customizer microservice, an evaluator microservice, a guardrail microservice. And it's all baked in, and then there's kind of like a prompt in and an event out. These NIMs are like powerful little atomic units that can power your domain-specific application. Now, the LLM behind it, maybe you can plug it into OpenAI or you can plug it into whatever, but firstly, that's disintermediating OpenAI from the developer. So now the underlying model becomes kind of commoditized and you can switch them. And potentially, like, you get the model for free. It's just baked into the NIM. So what's the point of me hitting the OpenAI API? And like OpenAI just becomes nothing. It becomes, Linux. Who cares that it's Linux? It doesn't matter. And so I don't think it's a threat to OpenAI's entire business, but it is certainly a big part of what they're trying to do is become the intelligence layer for the internet. If there are developers implementing NIMs, disintermediating any particular model, and then the NIMs get their own models, their own intelligence, their own tuning, I mean, how much do I need OpenAI or Gemini or whatever? NVIDIA becomes soup to nuts, a full stack AI infrastructure player, disintermediating the other players. And those other players are their customers. And so I think that's a really interesting dynamic that they're floating with.
I was just reading today that OpenAI is hiring a lot of Google TPU engineers. Amazon's got a chip effort. Apple may have a chip effort. So I think all the big guys are trying to reduce their dependence on NVIDIA. And it's natural that NVIDIA would try to encroach on them too. And I think generally speaking, that's a good thing. That particular example is a good thing for the world because there's competition amongst the big guys. Now, if they're developing a developer platform, which there's a lot of SaaS layers on top of cloud providers or large language models that are more developer friendly than OpenAI has been able to develop yet, it might kill those in the process, I guess. But generally speaking, a world being super single threaded on NVIDIA, TSMC, ASML is not a great world for the tech industry, I don't think.
I think it's a pretty dramatic example of platform risk, right? In this case, NVIDIA is the platform, and the platform's gonna cannibalize. It's like gravity. The platform goes up stack. So what we're saying is the hardware platform, in this case, NVIDIA, with its core software layer, is moving up stack. And that's a threat to their customers being Meta, Amazon, OpenAI, Azure. What you're saying, Emil, equally interestingly is, well, those players are trying to go down stack, down into the hardware layer, and build their own NVIDIAs. It's like you said, Yaniv, if you're going to bet on search plus AI, you bet on Google every time. If I bet on hardware plus software, I think I'd bet on NVIDIA. It's harder to spin up a fab, spin up all that architecture in physical real world objects than it is to train some models these days. And so in that battle where they're all racing to be the full stack AI manufacturing plant, as Jensen puts it, I think NVIDIA is in a really strong place.
So here's my take on a new analogy I guess I'd like to try out on you guys. It might not seem very original, but it's AI being a bit like oil. And I mean it in a specific way, right? Which is in terms of how founders should think about it. This whole supply chain going from chip design, manufacturing, cloud, training, and so on, that's kind of the oil industry, right? You've got the exploration, extraction, refining, and all of that. And oil business, remember, Standard Oil, I believe, was the first antitrust breakup in the US. So the oil business is one that is very capital intensive, very technologically advanced, especially back in its heyday, right? And it very quickly consolidated to a small number of big players. And if you were like, hey, guess what? I'm going to start an oil company, that's not a very good idea. Sure, there are some niche businesses that serve the oil industry, but overall, not a good idea. You can't compete with those big guys. But does that mean that the widespread extraction of oil didn't create a lot of opportunities for new businesses? Of course not, right? Because suddenly petrol, oil-based products were available for everybody to use. And that's kind of where I wanted to take this conversation, because I think this whole AI thing is often misunderstood, where you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to start an AI company, all YC and whatever, and investing in AI companies. And I still think that's totally the wrong way to think about it. The right way to think about it is AI exists, right? It is potentially an order of magnitude, a quantum shift in the amount of energy and power and capability that is available to startups. So ultimately, in that sense, it is an input, it is a tool. And so whatever it is that you're building, even B2B SaaS or anything else, consumer products, deep tech, whatever it is, what you should be thinking about is, I'm, same as always, trying to solve real problems for real consumers, for real customers. I'm going to iterate as quickly as possible. I'm going to experiment and so on. But now I have these amazing tools available to me. And not only is it a great opportunity for me to use those, but the flip side of that is it is everyone else's opportunity too. So it's also a threat. And this is something I've seen, and I've had a couple of founder conversations this week where it really hit home for me, where I'm like, the way to be thinking about AI as a founder is I have the opportunity, but also now the requirement to be a lot faster and a lot more ambitious, really. Whatever was a reasonable pace of execution a year ago is no longer acceptable. I saw a tweet just the other day, I can't remember who it was, but it was from some VC saying that in their portfolio, they reckon about 3 or 4% of startups have really cracked how to use AI in their workflow, in their product development, and they are going to come for everybody else. And so what I take away from this for founders is, if you're talking about your AI-powered product on your marketing landing page, that's all wrong too. Because AI is an input, right? You don't talk about how iPhone is produced by a factory that uses oil. No, you talk about its great fucking features that were possible because of fossil fuels. And so I think that's really what it's about here. And if I'm a founder looking at AI, that's how I think about it. That's what I'm recommending the founders I work with to do.
There's a lot going on. It's all shifting sands. And I think what's interesting for me in this topic is, even amongst the biggest of the big players, where you would expect a sort of stratification between NVIDIA and a Google or OpenAI, that stratification is being diluted. And they're now starting to eat into each other's layers. I didn't quite expect that from NVIDIA this early in the game. And I guess that's my bad. I think Jensen is very ambitious, and that team is very good at executing. And it seems like he's okay to maybe poke the bears, poke his customers a little bit, and start cannibalizing their differentiation. I think that's quite an interesting bet that he's willing to make.
But what he's not said I'm building some big gargantuan LLM that's as capable as ChatGPT. He has not said that he's investing in distribution channels like Google naturally has, or Apple naturally has, or Microsoft naturally has. So he's not gone all the way yet,
No, but
right?
He's not trying to, I don't think he's interested right now to create the NVIDIA LLM, but he is building all of the scaffolding and all of the middleware and all of the training and all of the tuning and all of the tooling so that anyone anywhere can build their own LLM.
Yeah.
which completely commoditizes and disintermediates OpenAI and Gemini and Google. And so he's going to all the sovereign teams, all the countries, and all of the massive pharmaceutical companies and material science companies and everything. He's like, those guys are coming for your lunch. You all need to be my customers, and you all need to be building your own. That's his bet. He wants all the flowers to bloom. Let's talk about it this way. If you're Jensen, you currently have massive concentration risk in your business. You have 7 customers. That's it. So his agenda is to turn that into 707,000 customers, big, heavy-duty customers globally. And so he's building all of the infrastructure to bring those customers in and empower them to compete. And I think that's a really, really smart strategy. It's not necessarily aligned with his customers, his current 7 customers, but I think it's incredibly clever for him to do that because he needs to de-risk his own business.